Hi, everyone. So as you all know, this meeting is recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. One thing I thought we could do this week is look at what we could do in 1.20. Master has been opened again based on the plan that I think was shared on the mailing list, which is basically starting with PRs that are like tagged or labeled with cleanup, and then test flakes, and then bug fixes, and then only after that it will be open for feature development. Before I get into that, I was wondering if anyone has any questions or would like to discuss other topics so that we can time box properly the discussion related to the tasks that we're going to do in 1.20. Okay, so we're gonna do only this. Hopefully this is not gonna take a long time as well. And so let me share this spreadsheet. So I added a few things. Please feel free to add or comment on the spreadsheet. If you have anything else in mind that you would like to prioritize or work on. Perhaps I can share the screen. I think I need to do some permission, like give some permissions and stuff. Like I'll do it later. Anyways, if you guys have the spreadsheet open, the first item is graduating default pod topology spreading into beta. This is going to allow us to bypass the spreading plugin that we have right now, the old one, and it will allow us to it will allow admins to configure the default topology spreading criteria. This is exciting because first, it's more accurate than the old one because it looks at all the pods in the cluster rather than only the filtered ones. And the other thing is its customizability. You can customize which topology domains you want the default spreading to act on, and also the max skew, basically how aggressive you want to be, etc. So this effort is led by Aldo. Aldo, do you have anything else to add related to this?
I think the only blocker is to figure out how to disable it without having to disable the whole pod topology spreading feature. There are some limitations in how we can interpret the API. So I'll have to talk with API machinery folks to figure out what's the appropriate way to do this.
Would it like just changing the constraint in the component config to a pointer to a reference allow you to do that?
Yeah, they said when I initially did the change, I actually did that, and yeah, they said that was we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't distinguish between nil and empty array.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The other obvious option is to have a flag.
Sorry, I was going to say I missed the issue with the topology constraint. I heard in order to disable it, you have to disable the whole thing. I didn't follow that quite.
So the feature today, there's two separate plugins. One of them implements the default spreading, and the other one implements the pod topology spreading that comes from the pod specs. And this new feature is basically deprecating the default spreading and just making it a configuration on the new one. And this default spreading with the new with just configuration, we cannot disable it without disabling the whole plugin, and thus both features. And that's a major blocker at this point.
So we are saying like earlier default spreading was always there, right? And so it's also a plugin in the new framework, and we are saying that both will act independently of each other, and then their weights will apply, right? So we don't know how the behavior of that will affect this one. Is that the main problem?
No, the problem is that currently you can disable each one independently, and in the future we cannot do that unless we find a way that is compliant with API practices.
But currently the only way to disable is probably by passing scheduler flags, right?
No, you do that through the configuration. I think we're going a little bit off topic here.
Okay, I mean, I just wanted, I'm waiting for that feature. That's why I was wanted to know if there are any blockers. So this is already available as beta, and so it's enabled by default in all clusters, right?
We're not talking about topology spreading itself. We're talking about default topology spreading. That's a different, slightly a different feature that builds on topology spreading.
I see.
Yeah, let me try to explain a little bit on the background. So we have the topology spread, right? That feature has been stable in 1.19. We are not talking about that. But underneath, there's some related feature, like in the before we call it sort of selector spreading. So that means we can implicitly to associate the relationship between, for example, a replica set and the backing part, or the service and its backing part. So it's kind of associated by the label selector. So that we have that feature, right? Selector spreading, so that we try to spread this path which are associated by their label selector evenly across the cluster. So that's called selector spreading. So that feature was implemented in 1.18 as a plugin. So that is called, in 1.18 it's called default topology spread or something. But in 19 it's renamed to be selector spread. So that is the plugin story. But because that is implemented as the standalone plugin, if you want to disable that feature, you have to disable that plugin. So that's its current state. So, but a lot of logic implemented there has been overlapped with some common utility, which is the current stable topology spread feature. So that we decided to sort of deprecate that plugin and instead put some configuration parameters to the, or implicit parameters or constraints to the stable topology spread plugin, so that we only have one plugin, and under that plugin you can have explicit constraint, implicit constraint, and they will take some priority one over each other, so that in the end we will have one plugin. So that's the whole story.
Okay, I can discuss that offline if it's not part of the schedule.
Sure,
but my concern was that if I know about selector spreading .go file that was there in older schedulers, it seems to have moved to the plugin, right? And if we are saying, if by saying that implicit, we are saying that the pod topology constraint spec will not be there and still will support spreading, I think that is what we should have. Otherwise it will be breaking change for others, right? It will be, if we just suddenly remove and people
we're already doing that. The idea here is that we're going to replace that standalone plugin with a default configuration that applies both topology spread constraint on all pods that they don't have it by default. So
That
the
makes sense.
behavior
I
is the
think,
same.
is there
The
a
question
proposal
here
for-
that, let me just finish there. The question here is how can we allow administrators to disable that default behavior?
Okay.
In the past, you were able to do that by basically disabling the default spread plugin, or what you used to call it the score function, right? You can just
Right.
remove it from the configuration.
Mhm.
And so you are able to say, okay, I don't want to have my collections be spread by default. With this new feature where we do that using a default constraint that we configure in component config, there's no way to do it. Because we don't distinguish between nil and empty and whatnot. Yeah, there is more discussion on the issue that Aldo listed. So it's a little bit of nonce. I don't think it's not a breaking change. It's just a way for us to give administrators more flexibility to change the default behavior of the scheduler.
Sounds good. I'll read through the issue and then I'll reach out again.
Thanks. Any other questions related to this? Okay, so the second item, which like I'm also excited about, hopefully we can do in 1.20 is refactoring Kate's core dependencies out of the framework, out of the scheduler as well. Mike and I just remember. Sorry, I forgot his name, but GitHub is in something. So they're working on actually on a feature where we're going to do this across the whole scheduler. Kate's package. So we're creating a new repo in staging that will basically factor out all these utility functions across the whole Kate's code. And so now we'll be able to cut all the dependencies that the scheduler have on Kate's main repo. Kate's main package. And this is quite useful because it will allow out of tree plugins and custom schedulers also like to only reference staging repo rather than referencing Kate's KK code, for which we don't have any guarantees about stability and backward compatibility and whatnot. Not sure if Mike is not here to talk about this. Okay. The third item is deprecating custom plugins. So I discussed this previously. Node label and service affinity, those are really old custom priority predicates that has been moved into plugins because of the refactoring. But those, they do have already GA features, which is, again, node affinity and pod affinity. We should phase them out before they make it like into a component config GA. Any questions about this one as well? That's good. And then there we have the issue of continuing to refactor the core scheduler code into plugins. In the past cycle, we led the effort to refactor the preemption logic into a post filter plugin. One thing that's left is the assume forget logic to be of the pod to move it to reserve and reserve. So there's an issue. We're discussing their motivations and feasibility of this thing, how we can do it safely as well, because such logic should never be disabled. But from my perspective, I think we should try as much as we can move anything we have into plugins and have the scheduler code as simply as a bunch of plugins, and then the scheduler code is basically running the framework and those extension points, and that's it. It's easier to maintain and probably going to basically streamline everything we do. Okay. Next item is benchmarking. So Adi is working on 2 items related to benchmarking. One is adding affinity and spreading benchmarks, kubemark benchmarks into the test infra scaling test suite. This is available on, let me share the link, perf dash. I don't know if you are aware of this. So those basically a test that will run daily on as kubemark benchmarks, and they will show up on the dashboard. So this will allow us to understand better how far are we from like in terms of performance for complex features. Right now, we only have that for vanilla workloads, but he will be adding ones for preferred anti-affinity, preferred affinity, pod spreading. So we'll be able like to either inform our optimization efforts in the future or catch regressions when they happen. And the other item is integration benchmarks, the one that we have under scheduler perf under test integration. And those are going to allow us to do simulations related to the impact of unscheduled pods and the overhead of the preemption path in general. So this is the first step towards optimizing the scheduler for those types of workloads. Any questions? Anything you want to add on this, Adi?
Nothing much. It's just both of them are in progress. You can probably follow the PRs, but yeah.
Sounds good. And then the item related to efficient requeuing of pods, so we have an issue opened related to that. Basically trying to make smarter, basically between quotations, decisions on when we move pods out on scheduled queue. We had a proposal last cycle from Aldo, make it like extremely generic, and then there is a path, basically like a ramp up to that we can take that is a little bit more hard-coded, more targeted, but it's simpler, I think, to start with, to evaluate the impact of actually doing this. This is going to depend on the previous item as well, which is integration tests benchmarks. So it will allow us to evaluate the impact of having like efficient requeuing. So that's why Adi is taking on this one as well, because they're really tightly coupled with the previous item. Okay. So the last item on the list is extension points for pod queue, dequeue, or update. So we had a request to add in-queue function into the queue sort plugin. I think it's reasonable. It's open for discussion as well on the issue, so we can, it's not like a done deal. But one thing we can do is basically add callbacks when we add, delete, or update, when we receive add, delete, or update events for a pod that is not scheduled yet. So basically to the queue. So we can do that, I think, and that will allow more advanced, like basically plugins to be developed. As the issue discusses, you could have like virtual queues implemented by those plugins. They maintain that state, and then based on that, they sort the pod when we sort it in the global active queue. So yeah, feel free to look at that issue, have like a comment or give feedback if you have any concerns about it, something we've missed. This is likely going to need a KIP as well. Anyways. Okay, so those are the things that I have. I've listed here. We have a few more minutes. So I'm opening the floor for any other discussions, or if you have any other items you want to add to the list, feel free to speak up.
Abdul, I have a question. As I can see in the sheet, there is no owner for deprecation, custom plugins, for extension point, but in the issue I have seen, in issue about deprecation custom plugins, I have seen that it was a volunteer, right?
It was, sorry, what?
It was a volunteer.
Oh, you mean assigned?
Volunteered, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Harsh, I think he offered to take on this one. But yeah, if you want to work on it, like you can also collaborate with him on this effort. I think it will take some time. It will it will be multiple PRs. There are like, I think 2 plugins that we want to remove. So maybe 2 contributors can work on this in parallel.
Okay, I don't.
Are you interested in doing it?
Yes, I am interested in. Okay, but I will talk with him about it.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, hi everyone, this is Arjun Jaswal, and I'm new to this community, so I'm looking on some tickets or some issues that I can work on.
Sorry, we cannot hear you clearly.
I'm saying that this is Arjun Jaswal, and I'm new to this community, so I'm looking for issues that I can pick up. So any help?
Sounds good. Hopefully in the next, like once master is open, there will be like all these issues will be likely broken into smaller tasks, and whoever is leading a specific issue can create smaller issues and tag them with help wanted. So just watch out for the help wanted labels.
Yeah, thank you.
So, hi everyone, this is Anuj here. I am new to this group. I've joined it for the first time. Basically, from my team, I got to know that there's a problem in the descheduling part of the scheduler. Basically, when you deschedule something, the spread is not maintained, and that was one of the reasons I got interested in joining this group. So is there a plan right now, as in when we will address it, and maybe I can contribute there?
So there is a KIP open. I'll share it, and I have it in my backlog to read it. Related to the descheduler. Where's the chat? So take a look at this one, see if it addresses the problem that you're facing. Yeah, it's Jan or Jan from Red Hat. I think he's leading that effort. Take a look at the KIP.
Sorry, the last I remember, I think there was someone who was also working on implementing the topology spread constraints API in Descheduler. Is that still going on?
Hey, this is Sean. Yeah, I have an open work in progress pull request. It really doesn't work for the descheduler yet. It's kind of sort of close for the doing the even pod spreading or topology spread constraint stuff in dscheduler. So that's a work in progress.
Okay, I mean, is that like, are you actively working on it? Because I'm also interested in that, like getting that, not doing the work, but actually consuming it. So just wanted to know.
So I think what I'm going to do is I realistically don't have time to finish this pull request. So I'm going to clean up the commit history a little bit, and I'll offer it up for other people to finish off at this point in time. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm also interested in using it, but I think I realistically don't have time to finish the code.
Okay.
Sean, can you please add that into the spreadsheet, and we can track it there, and we can find volunteers to continue the work?
Sure, I'll add the link to the issue and the pull request to the spreadsheet. Sure.
Wonderful, thank you. And I just want to comment that the one that you're working on is related to required spreading, right?
It is related to the pod, the new, what I'll call the newer feature, the pod topology spread constraint feature.
Right, but it's for required, not preferred.
I'd say it's not really implemented yet, so it could be either.
Well, when you're for preferred, you would need to set some thresholds and whatnot. Like I don't think we have in the dscheduler anything implemented related to preferred, whether that's preferred anti-affinity or preferred affinity or preferred anything. It's all about filters.
I'm gonna say I don't know enough about scheduling to answer your question. I think that's what my new answer is.
The descheduler, right? Like what I'm trying to say is that the cost-based scaling down of pods, I think, is trying to bring preferred semantics into the descheduler. At least that's my rough understanding from this first skim. Maybe we can comment on this because you already reviewed the KIP, but it's going to expand the let's say what the descheduler can do, not only for required but also for preferred placement, prioritization basically of pods of nodes.
Yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead, Aldo.
Oh, okay. So maybe it's worth having 10 minutes or so next week to discuss the plans for descheduler. I mean, next meeting. If
I agree. I'll ping Mike and Jan. I'll propose to them to have something prepared, maybe one slide or just a list of tasks that they plan to do with the descheduler.
Yeah, I think that will be helpful. Is it going to be discussed in the same meeting next week, you're saying?
Yes, that's Aldo's proposal. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we have have a meeting next week, like I mentioned a bit on the latest status on the schedule plugin sub project. You know, there are a couple of interesting proposal and implementation going on. So I can go through that.
Yeah, that would be good. And if you have other things that you want to add into the spreadsheet to track related to the plugins, auto-free plugins, it would be great to have them there as well.
Yeah, I can, but a little bit tricky part is that the scheduling plugin subrepo is usually one release behind the upstream. So for example, right now, 1.19 is out. So schedule plugin is developed on the 1.19 code base. So,
I think it's fine.
Yeah, anyway, yeah, I will leave the items here, yeah.
So I have a few more questions. Are we done? Then I can take it to Slack or next time.
I can stay for 5 more minutes, but I'm not sure if others have time.
Okay, I'll just ask the question and yeah, we can discuss that further in an issue or something. So my first question was, I saw in one of the issues yesterday that the current plugin or the current scheduler can run multiple profiles, does that mean that I can run the same scheduler and serve two different pods with different scheduler name in their fields?
Aldo?
Correct. Yes, that's the point.
Okay. And does anyone, I think this might be unrelated, but does anyone know if managed Kubernetes providers are planning to support this configuration, like scheduler configuration, like in EKS or GKE, or that would never happen? Or any thoughts on that?
It should be
Um,
it should be naturally available in 1.18 in any managed service.
Right, but the thing is, the provider needs to provide a different, like multiple profiles. Like by default, the default component config has only the default scheduler.
Yeah, maybe they need to make some default flavors for you to use.
Right, they need to provide a component config file that defines multiple schedulers.
So currently, I don't understand component. Is it possible for us to create the component config as a CRD-like object and these EKS?
No, it's a file. It's a file you
file.
pass to the scheduler.
Right.
I think, Aldo, can we do it through config map as well?
I think it could be possible, but at least in GKE, since the
right,
the pods are differently, it might not be. But I would suggest to you to reach out to the specific provider and ask them through their support
Sounds good.
pages.
And my last question was the runtime scheduling, right? I think I've asked this before. Like, is there any plan to support that within the scheduler, or is that always going to be in the scheduler after the pod has been scheduled?
There are no plans to do that in the scheduler itself, unless we get to a point where we build the descheduler as a another process that Go routine runs from the scheduler, something like that. But that's like a major change at the scale of the framework. So it's a significant change going to be.
Okay, so
but no one, yeah, go ahead.
Nobody has asked for it, or nobody has suggested like nobody has any requirement like that has come across this thing.
So the idea is also, that's why the descheduler is a separate project, so that the learnings can happen there faster.
Mm-hmm.
And once that's ready, we could think of merging the two things in a single binary.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the cycles for these two things are different. So scheduling has a specific cycle to schedule path once it comes into the schedule, right? But the balancing and the runtime scheduling can happen at any time. So periodically, or you define the intervals. So fundamentally, they were sort of different. So that's the way they were kept into two separate projects.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you all. I'll see you next time. I'll ping Mike, and Wei will also add the other tasks related to the schedule, like the external plugins. This is not only to track things, but also to have, like for us, an opportunity to find owners, explicit owners that we can have as point of contacts, so that we can also direct new contributors to these owners or points of contacts if they need help. All right. Thank you all. See you.
You.